Hi guys, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of water in your garden. Now, everybody talks about having the proper soil and if it's direct sun or partial sun, but one of the very often overlooked aspects of gardening is watering. Whether you're growing in pots, hanging baskets, raised beds, or in the ground, there are a lot of different factors that are going to go into how you're going to water your garden. And of course, watering your seedlings is super important too. So I guess let's start at the very beginning. So before your seeds germinate, you want to make sure that you keep that soil evenly moist. You don't want it to be drenched in water, of course, but you also do not want it to dry out. Once they've sprouted, you want to make sure that you let them dry out a little bit, but of course, being a little small container, these are going to need to be kept an eye on. It doesn't take very long for them to dry out, and if they do dry out, if you catch it in time, of course, they'll bounce back, but of course, they're not going to be as resilient as a more established plant. I do want to point out, though, in my experience, I prefer to underwater versus overwater. When you're overwatering your plants, it can really affect them, and when you underwater them, they'll be able to bounce back, I find, a little bit better. If they're overwatered, there's nothing you can really do but wait until they try and soak up that water and drink it and use it, as opposed to when underwatering, they're a little thirsty. So once you give them that water, they're going to drink it all up, use it, and just start to grow. We'll go in the greenhouse here and I will show you some of my tomatoes that are kind of crazy. So if we look at these tomatoes here, you can see this tomato is little, and you can even see how wet that soil still is. Whereas this tomato beside it is bigger, and I can pick it up. This is super light. So once they get a little bit bigger, you're going to have to watch them. There's nothing I can do to make this drink anything more or faster. Whereas this one, I know it's growing nicely. It's drunk all its water. So I'm just going to water the ones that need it, and I'm not watering this one. I think I've said this before, but for your seedlings, the best way to tell if they need water is just to physically check the soil with your hand. If you're growing in certain cups, like I like to grow in the solo cups, and I've learned basically how to tell when they're dry. You can kind of lift them up and feel them. But again, that finger test to check the soil is the best way. So I had mentioned pots before. If you're growing anything in a container, it's going to need a more regular watering. Again, raised beds as well, they're going to need a more regular watering as opposed to in ground. And then your in ground is just going to depend kind of on where you live, your type of soil, all that kind of thing. Where we have the garden here, we're actually pretty close to the surface water table, I guess you could say. You can see all the standing water there. We have built up above that, but once these plants grow, they really have a lot of access to water down here, which has been really nice. I don't have to water down here as often as I do in the raised beds. And then right down there is a canal that is overflow from the pond across the street. Generally speaking, that is full for most of the summer, and we have a pump in there, and I can just pump that water out to water the things as I need them. But there has been a couple of years where it's just dried up. So we tried to dig it down a little bit more, or then I've just had to haul water out of our tank from the shop. We still got to shape up these beds, but over here in this sweetie mess, you can see kind of the idea behind the raised rows. So I've kind of just raised up the rows with the soil and then having the walkways a little bit lower. Then when it rains, sometimes these fill with water, but it doesn't get flooded up here, yet the roots are down far enough that they're going to have access to all that water as it drains through. So why is water so important? Well, without getting too technical, plants need water to make sugar. We always think about, fertilizing the soil or having that healthy soil, which of course is super important. But in reality, plants are just using carbon dioxide and water and using for sunlight and chlorophyll to make some sugars. So if your plants are lacking in certain minerals or they're not getting enough sunlight, it's going to stunt their growth, it's going to affect their growth, but not as much as water. You could have the best soil with all of the proper correct nutrients, but if they're not getting the proper watering, they're not going to be able to use it. And as I mentioned before, overwatering can be almost worse than underwatering. So of course, as a gardener, we love rain. Sometimes we get overwatered because of the rain, and there's nothing we can really do about it. I really love the raised rows because it allows that water to kind of shed off a little bit. Of course, the raised beds, you build them properly, it allows for proper drainage or up off the ground. And then if you're not getting any rain and you're having to water your garden, it is best to go ahead and water it very thoroughly and then let it dry out. You don't want to be watering it a little bit every day. Really, the best way for most plants is once a week, a really, really heavy, deep water, and then you let them go ahead and use that water up as they need it. Of course, there's exceptions to all the rules. Some plants like more water, some plants don't, and you'll learn this as you go. I mean, I guess there's a reason why they say April showers bring May flowers. And then just over here, you can see this is where I had showed just a couple videos ago, there was nothing there. Now, nothing has changed except for rain. All the nutrients were in the ground there before. The sun was still shining before, but they needed that rain and all that water in order to just be able to flourish. I wanted to show you one last thing here as a little sneak peek, because I had told you in my last video that I was worried about the potatoes. So I was in here weeding yesterday, really not seeing anything until I pulled up what I thought was a weed, but it's not. That's a potato. And then of course, once you see one, you can kind of go down the line and then you start to see them all over the place. So of course, that rain, it helped get these potatoes sprouted as well. So I definitely encourage you to think about how and when you're going to be watering your garden. Of course, if you're a gardener, you probably know in the summertime, if you're going away on vacation, you got to get somebody to come and water your garden. That's how important it is. It's almost like a pet, like another living thing that we are caring for. So you don't have to. You could just let it rain and you get what you get. But really, if you want to get the most out of your garden and really maximize it, getting that water scheduling down will just help it flourish. And as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.